If you have a novel idea, you want to make sure that it's worthy of your time. You don't want to spend a year or 2 or 3 years writing a book only to discover like, oh, it's not going to work out. Or maybe you're the type that has a bunch of ideas and you just don't know which one to choose. So what I'm going to do in this video is take you through an 8-step process, 8 tests to help you figure out whether your novel idea is good enough. And if you can't say yes to all 8 of these, then maybe you should consider a different idea or maybe to tweak this concept in some way. So let's get started with number 1. The dinner party test. So what you should do is get a bunch of your friends together for, say, a dinner party, and at the party, casually reveal a book that you've been reading with this particular premise. And the premise will be yours. Now, don't tell them this is your idea. You're trying to get unfiltered and unguarded responses to a novel concept. Now, you should definitely practice this beforehand. You want to have a single sentence pitch that makes the reader want to read it. And let me give you a little bit of advice. You don't want to describe what the book is about. That's the wrong way to approach this. A girl participates in a competition to the death. I mean, yeah, that's what the Hunger Games is about, but I don't think that makes anybody want to read the book. Instead, you want a single sentence that ignites the curiosity of your listener. To save her sister, a girl must murder 23 children on live TV while the rich place bets on who dies first. So your goal at this dinner party is to get your friends to say, "Oh, that sounds good. What book is that?" And then you can be like, "Well, it's not written yet, but it's gonna be mine." Most writers try to do this after they finish the book. They figure out how to summarize it in a single sentence. You want to do it beforehand just to test whether people are interested in reading something like this. The dinner party test honestly can save you years of your life. This next test might hurt a little bit, but you should still go through with it. It is number 2. The right person test. What I want you to do is ask yourself, am I the right person to write this novel? And there are all sorts of reasons, a lot of them not your fault, why you might not be the right person to write this novel. And I'll give you some examples. Look, I love reading sci-fi, but I'm not very good at science. It was my worst subject in school. I can't tell a quark from a proton. So you have to ask yourself, like, would I be a good candidate to write a sci-fi novel? I mean, probably not. I also really enjoy reading historical novels. Master and Commander, Wolf Hall, Pillars of the Earth. But do I know that much about history? No. No, I do not. I would have to do some serious research, almost transform myself into a different person so I could pull off writing one of those books. What I'm trying to get you to do is to separate what you enjoy reading from what you want to write. Now, a lot of those times, those two things are aligned, right? I'm just saying not all of the time. And you have to be really honest with yourself and be like, am I the right person to write this book? So as an editor, I once edited a book for a woman who was really good at like really small details and description and these reflective interior moments of her character, and she was kind of bad at plotting. But what was the genre she was writing? She was writing a very commercial, very action-driven, very plot-driven novel. And so yeah, I gave her plenty of great advice about that book, but I also said, hey, for your next novel, I want you to just consider writing a more character-centric novel, one in a genre that I think plays more to your particular writing strengths. Another element of this test is to ask yourself, how many books in this genre have I read? Now, this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway, and hey, you can fight with me in the comments if you disagree. If you haven't read 30 books in your genre, then you really don't have any business writing this novel. You really do need a passing familiarity with what is out there before you can attempt to contribute to the genre overall. Also, we have a new cohort starting in BOOKFOX LAB, our mentorship program. Nab a spot now before they are all gone if you want feedback on your writing and guidance on your book. You're going to find yourself shaking your head in agreement at this next point, I think. I hope. It is number 3, the wow factor test. So for your book concept, I want you to ask yourself, what is your wow factor? Like, what is it about this book which really makes it stand apart from all the other books, and make it into something that a reader's gonna be like, I have to read that. I have to spend money and spend time to get to this book. So we're gonna run through 5 different factors, and let me just say, you do not need all 5 of these. Honestly, if you have 1 of these, or say 2 of these, it can be enough to carry your whole book. The first one would be a premise, meaning, do you you have a high concept that grabs the imagination immediately. And I'll give you one from the novel Pandora's Star. What if a star was suddenly surrounded by a giant sphere and an alien civilization had trapped another civilization inside that sphere? Another wow factor might just be a strong plot. If you have a really big twist or reveal or surprise, sometimes that is enough to power the whole book. I just think about Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, how halfway through that book you get such a shock and surprise, and that really is the main thrust of the book's momentum. A third example would be if you have a really crazy, far-fetched setting, whether it be imaginary or a real one. In China Miéville's The City in the City, he basically has two cities sort of layered on top of one another, sort of like echoes or shadows or mirrors of one another, and characters go from one to the other. That kind of inventive setting is important enough to float your whole book. Another wow factor might be your main character. Are they super charismatic or lovable or hilarious or unreliable? Think of Ignatius J. Reilly in Confederacy of Dunces. His characterization makes the entire novel work. And the last wow factor to look for is simply a unique style of writing. For instance, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. He has a very distinctive writing style. It's very clipped phrases, short sentences, lots of white space. It's very easy to read, it's very distinctive, and I think that really helps people who like that type of writing to enjoy his books. All right, we're moving right along, and this is my favorite test out of the entire video. It is number 4, the weight test. Ask yourself this question: does your book have weight? Now, weight comes from a number of things. It could come from personal baggage. If you got divorced recently and you're writing a book about a divorce, okay, naturally you're going to feel super invested in that subject matter. I think of Mark Sarvis's book, Harry Revised. He had recently gone through a divorce, he wrote about a divorce, and that really helped the novel work. Anytime you can connect your novel to a personal wound or obsession, the reader's going to be able to tell that you put your heart and soul into this book. A second way you can have weight in your novel is whether you're writing something about a topic of passion. If you are writing about trafficked children or freedom of speech or environmental concerns and you really care about that topic, it's going to give you enough passion and energy to get to the end of this novel, and the book's going to be better because of your fascination. Or maybe fascination isn't the right term. Don't be too fascinated by trafficked children or environmental degradation. But you know what I mean, come on. And the last thing you can do to check for weight is any topic which is super controversial. If you have a particular hot button topic in politics or something which is very, controversial in religion, okay, those are topics which are worthy to write about, and it gives you a lot of subject matter for your novel. Now, I'm going to make you imagine 2 scenarios that'll help you figure out whether your book has weight. The first one is, imagine you are writing this book still 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in the future. Do you still feel committed to it? Are you still happy that you're working on it? And here's a second scenario to imagine to determine whether your book has weight. Imagine that you're on your deathbed. Do you regret that you didn't leave this legacy? Honestly, if you don't feel the life or death stakes in writing this book, then you might not have the sort of passion necessary to go through and finish the book. So I never say subscribe on these videos, but I guess I should tell you to subscribe, so subscribe. And also, if you subscribe, you're more likely to see a video right when it comes out, and you can also comment earlier, and I'm definitely more likely to respond to early comments. So yeah, please subscribe. Let's move right along to the next point, which probably has the biggest chance of sabotaging your book. It is number 5, the town versus the brick test. So if your first novel is designed to be a 900-page epic with 27 different main characters, I'm a little worried for you. Look, the more complex it is, the more chance there is for a lot of stuff to go wrong, the higher chance it is for you not to be able to finish it, the higher chance it is for you not to be able to publish it. The question is, do you want this first book? Do you want it to be sort of a practice run that you end up abandoning or throwing away at some point? Or do you want it to actually work and to publish it? With that in mind, my advice would be to tighten the scope of what you're trying to accomplish. Go narrower, focus more, and tell a little bit of a story inside this grander universe that you have. You can always keep the gargantuan monster in your memory bank for your 3rd novel or your 4th novel. I just think it's not the right one to start with. Basically, your imagination is absolutely wonderful, but there is a problem with having too good of imagination, where you keep on coming up with more and more narrative tendrils, and you keep expanding, and you have a hard time closing it off and wrapping it up in a way that feels emotionally satisfying to the reader. You all know those authors. You all know those authors where you're like, oh, you're super good at starting a story. you are not so hot at finishing a story. Don't be one of those people. Like, be a closer. Make sure you can finish and close. I don't know how many of you have read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. It's a classic, it's wonderful, but I've never forgotten there's one scene in there where someone is having a hard time describing a town. And the advice that's given to them is, you're trying to do too much. You're trying to describe a whole town. Instead of describing a town, why don't you go just to the main street and describe that? Or instead of that main street, just focus on the bank. And maybe even the bank is too big. Maybe just focus on the front side of the bank. And maybe even the front side of the bank is too big. So instead, why don't you pick out one single brick in the facade of that bank front and write about that one brick, the texture on that one brick. And then through careful description and analysis of that one single brick, you can expand out and it will tell you everything you need to know about the town. If you focus on the brick in your novel, your book's going to be more manageable, you're going to be able to tell the story and finish the story, and then you're much more likely to be able to publish this. Focus on the brick and the whole world will open up to you. The next test you absolutely need to use to validate your novel idea is number 6, the common denominator test. So ask yourself, are there examples of books out there that are similar to my idea? I cannot tell you how many times authors have come to me and said, no one has ever written a book like this before. My knee-jerk response in those situations is always like, you know that's not a good idea, right? That means there are no readers who want to read something like this. And I know you're going to be like, originality sells, like originality is great. And then my second response would be, are you sure about that? Because usually what that tells me is they just haven't read a lot. They don't know what's out there, and so they think their concept is entirely original and new, and it fits pretty neatly inside a category, a genre of other novels. Now, maybe you have a good idea or a new twist on that category or genre of novels, and that's absolutely fine. You should aim for that, but 99.999% of the time, you haven't written something that's completely new and never been done before. So my advice would be to find your comp titles now. Comp titles are just something that agents like to look at because it lets them know, oh, these are books that are in the conversation with your book. Does not mean they have to be identical. It really doesn't. It just means they're similar in some ways and that the readers of these books would likely want to read your book as well. This is really discovering about whether your idea is marketable. If you want people to actually read your book, you should consider before you write it whether there is some sort of marketability angle, whether there is an audience who wants it. Here's a fun fact. In publishing, it used to be that the editors were the ones to have the ultimate say on whether a book got picked up or not. Now, it's really the marketers who have the final say, because if they don't know who to sell it to, they're not going to allow the editor to pick it up. They're not going to allow the editor to buy it. But even if you're self-publishing, you still need to be able to find an audience for your book. And the best way to find an audience is to find the type of books that are similar to your own. All right, now it's time for test number 7, which is a good one. It is the forget about it test. Can you forget about your novel idea? Because if you can, you probably should, right? It's the ones that lodge in your brain. It's the earworms that you just can't get out. Those are the ones that your subconscious is trying to tell you, hey, you need to write this. So one thing you can do is just leave that novel idea alone for a couple of weeks and see if it keeps on bugging you. If it doesn't, then, you just saved yourself a ton of stress and heartache. Another idea is simply to have a big list of novel ideas, write them all down, and then every couple of months, peruse all of them and see which ones continue to stick out. See which ones have legs that have longevity. I guarantee that some of them are going to seem like the worst ideas possible. You're like, I really thought that was a good idea. But then there's going to be others you're like, yeah, I could write the heck out of that novel. Really, the forget about it test is a way to make sure your subconscious is on board. If your conscious mind is like, yeah, let's do this, and your subconscious mind is like, I don't know about that, you should listen to your subconscious's doubts. Your subconscious really does know what stories are powerful, knows what stories matter a lot to you. So if it keeps on reminding you again and again about this story, that's the sign you should write it. And last but not least, let's look at point number 8. The scene test. Can you list 5 scenes from your as yet unwritten novel that you are super excited to write. And I'm not talking about generic ones like, oh, like big confrontation or inciting incident or climax. I'm not talking about like pieces of your narrative. I'm really talking about this particular scene between two characters in this place and they're doing X or Y. I'm talking about a fight between a couple when she finds that he's wearing her dead mother's glasses. If you can't come up with at least 5 scenes like that, then you're probably not ready to start writing this book. You do need a pretty deep well of excitement to power you through an entire novel, and I think having those scenes in mind is enough to give you a good head start. Do not forget to click the link below to find out more about BookFox Lab, my coaching program. It really will help you. Also, if you're just beginning your novel, I have a great series of videos for you. Check out the playlist on the screen. It is a long list of all the videos I've made that really help you get started with your novel. So watch those videos, and I hope you have a great writing day.